This is a tale of two commencement speeches, one by Tim Cook, CEO of Apple, and one by Steve Jobs, CEO of Apple. They're 15 years apart, one in 2005 and one this year. So neither Jobs nor Cook are Christians, granted, but they are the leaders of arguably the world's most creative and most successful companies. Steve Jobs gave his speech at Stanford 15 years ago, and Tim Cook gave Ohio State's commencement speech last month. So I'd like to today compare and contrast these two commencement speeches. Are you ready for that, Brennan?
I'm going to do everything I can to be.
I know you will, because you are the man that can help me figure this stuff out. That's why you're here. So there you have it. Okay, so first was Steve Jobs. His commencement speech was unique because he opened with this line, "I never graduated from college. Truth be told, this is the closest I've gotten to a college graduation. I dropped out of Reed College after the first 6 months, but then stayed around as a drop-in for another 18 months or so before I really quit." So he would sneak around into classes that interested him because he didn't like the classes he was in, and he pretended to be a student in those classes. And so one class was calligraphy class. Throughout the campus, every poster, every label on every drawer was beautifully hand calligraphed. Because I had dropped out and didn't have to take the normal classes, decided to take a calligraphy class and learn how to do this. He says, I learned about serif and sans serif, about varying amount of space between different letter combinations. He loved to learn about typography. He found it fascinating. And then he says, if I've never dropped in on that single course in college, the Mac would have never had multiple typefaces or proportionally spaced fonts. And since Windows was copied the Mac, it's likely that no personal computer would have them. It's a little dig at his competitor there. Some classes in college don't seem relevant. And so, Brennan, you just graduated. What should students change their mindset toward those kind of classes? And if they should, why and how do you suppose they should do that?
It's a good question. I think overall, it to a large degree probably would just depend on the specific class. But I think a general rule of thumb is that you get out of college what you put into it. And I really do believe in college, as in life, a lot of expectations can be very self-fulfilling. So I knew a lot of people who, I would take these elective classes with, and the whole time they would just complain that this is a waste of time, why am I here, whatever, and then they wouldn't put forth any effort, they wouldn't be engaged, they wouldn't pay attention. So of course they wouldn't get anything out of it.
Right.
Because they didn't expect to and they didn't want to. But I very, very much enjoyed a lot of the elective classes I took, because they gave me just a more well-rounded understanding of the world. And, it's not like I didn't ever get annoyed, or I didn't ever have these frustrating assignments that made me wonder, why the heck am I taking this class? Or, why am I taking this class on the Vietnam War and I have 30,000 papers due, more than all my other classes, and this is just an elective.
Right.
I absolutely had those moments, but I'm really glad I took a class on the Vietnam War. It was the hardest class I took. Period. But I learned a ton, not just about the Vietnam War, but about global politics and world history, and how things that I never thought about that happened hundreds and hundreds of years ago can affect current events, So if I had never taken that class, I would have never learned how to think of the world in that bigger way,
Right. So you got your major and you have all these classes that you want to take, and then you have these gen ed courses, and it's most of the time in my working with students over the last 15 years, it's like, those are the ones that drive them crazy, because it's like, I don't see any relevance to this in my vocation. This isn't training me to be able to do my job. And so it's like a constant battle. It gets worse each year, it seems like, to try to get students to realize that this liberal arts education, this whole thing has value, because it teaches them how to think and how to problem solve, and to think about subject matters that they never would have dreamt about. Is there any of these courses, that these gen ed courses, I mean, how do you change your mindset on those kind of courses?
Probably something that doesn't have a pat answer, but because I think part of that just has to do with what your worldview is and what your goals are going to college. I think there's some people whose minds probably can't be changed because they've already made them up. They're going to college to get their degree in accounting because they want to be an accountant, because they want to make money and afford to buy their, Toyota Camry with leather seats. And that's
Don't you go making fun of Camrys now? Come on.
no, not Camry. You're right. That's not fair to the Camry. They're Chrysler 300 with
Yep.
all-wheel drive. But anyway, yeah. So some people, though, that's just for them. College is a means to an end, and that end is doing this very narrow construct of what they believe their vocation should be. And to be fair, I don't think most 18-year-olds are going to college thinking, yeah, I really want to learn how to be a well-rounded person and think critically. Most 18-year-olds don't know how to think critically. I mean, they do, but they don't think it's important. They have the capacity to, but they don't see the importance of it. So I think part of changing that mindset is realizing that, at least from a Christian standpoint, we are called to be citizens of the world, and we're called to be the best citizens we can be. And by doing so, we can shine God's light into the world. So that's one way to do it.
Yeah.
It'll help you be a better person. It'll help you learn how to vote more responsibly and analyze current issues and analyze things you see in the news. All of those things. I think anything when you're learning about the world and when you're learning about thinking and when you're learning about the way people are and the way they have been, all of those things are useful because all of those ideas, all of those concepts help you understand people better. And I think they help us understand ourselves better.
Nice. Let's go into this, some more of Jobs' speech here. He says, Woz and I started Apple in my parents' garage when I was 20. We worked hard, and in 10 years, Apple had grown from just the two of us in a garage into a $2 billion company with over 4,000 employees. We had just released our finest creation, the Macintosh. A year later, I had just turned 30, and then I got fired. He explains that as Apple grew, he had hired someone that he thought would be great to work with. And they got along really well for about a year or so. And then they had different visions for the company, and the board of directors sided with the other guy. And so at 30, Steve Jobs was out.
And
yeah, he says, I was a very public failure. I even thought about running away from the valley, but something slowly began to dawn on me. I still loved what I did. The turn of events at Apple had not changed that one bit. I had been rejected, but I was still in love, and so I decided to start over. During the next 5 years, I started a company named Next, another company named Pixar, and fell in love with an amazing woman who would become my wife. Pixar went on to create the world's first computer animated feature film, Toy Story, and is now the most successful animation studio in the world. In a remarkable turn of events, Apple bought Next, I returned to Apple, and the technology we developed at Next is at the heart of Apple's current renaissance. So here's where I want to contrast this commencement speech with the one that Tim Cook gave last month. Steve Jobs' message to these Stanford grads was basically, find what you love to do in your work and find satisfaction there. This is the meaning of life. Your work is your purpose. Don't settle for just any job. He says, I'm convinced that the one thing that kept me going was that I loved what I did. You've got to find what you love. And that is that is as true for your work as it is for your lovers. Your work is going to fill a large part of your life, and the only way to be truly satisfied is to do what you believe is great work. And the only way to do great work is to love what you do. If you haven't found it yet, keep looking. Don't settle. So these Stanford students, these graduates, have opportunity and agency. They have the opportunity to make choices about their career paths that many Americans just don't have. 2/3 of America don't have these kind of opportunities. So the Stanford grads can chase their bliss. They can seek to find meaning in their work. But we can contrast that with Tim Cook's speech last month. He was speaking to the graduating class during the coronavirus. And so these college students they had been home for 2 months. The last 2 months, they were taking classes at home via internet, online courses. And they're graduating. Commencement was sitting in their living room with their family, not sitting in a 100,000 seat football stadium like they do every year. And so what a change. And so Tim Cook takes that idea and he runs with it. He says, those of us who can look back on this time and remember inconveniences and even boredom can count themselves lucky. Many more will know real hardship and fear. Others still will be cut to the bone. And while we turn to our loved ones and friends for comfort, think hard about those whose impact on your life is more distant, but no less meaningful. Think about the undocumented father, ignored or scorned by his community, who is putting himself at risk in the fields today to feed his family and yours. Think about the single mother who stocks shelves at night and drives a city bus in the morning, without whom so much would fall apart. Think about the hospital orderly scrubbing down the ward on hands and knees, whose work today is as solitary and sacred as a high priest purifying a temple. Most of all, think about how you, blessed with a world-class education, might act and work and be differently when all of this is said and done. So the lack of opportunity has locked some into these vocations that we would call essential workers. And I just found it, I don't know if you found it interesting, but it's like for the rest of our lives, without the coronavirus, people just don't think about the people who do these essential jobs, and yet when everything was shut down, locked down, and we were all in quarantine, and I was able to work remotely with my laptop, and have these kind of meetings, and still remain productive. These people were asked to go to work, to still drive the bus, to still clean a factory floor, to still create, to be at a meat packing plant, and then that whole meat packing plant is, people after person, goes down with COVID, but they were there because they were seen as essential, and we don't usually give them the notice that we need to, and that because these are like not prestige jobs. And so for me, who is trying to, help people understand the value of vocation, the value of work, a lot of what we talk about is these white collar jobs and how to find meaning in your work, and how to, like what how Steve Jobs was saying, find what you love, go for it with a passion. And yet for most people, they go to work because they need to survive. And so what can we do? The question I guess I want to think about is how can we honor those with this kind of work? The word vocation comes from calling. And so we always talk about this, oh, what's the calling on your life? This grand, beautiful thing that a lot of people want to have. And yet for my friend Matt, his calling is to make a living so he could feed his family. That's about it, you know? And then you work with, well, a lot of folks on the construction site that probably feel the same way.
Working in the trades, as part of them for 4 years, and then now for the past year going forward, kind of overseeing.
Right before you're a construction site manager, is that what it'd be called?
Project manager.
Project manager. And before that, while in school, you worked in a welding factory, right?
Yeah, steel fabrication shop. Yeah.
So
iron work.
You're a welder while going to college. That was awesome. Gives you some insight into what we're talking about.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's funny you talk about that, because for me, very much a feeling that I struggled with while I was in college was being frustrated with my work. And I mean, I think you were present for that.
Yes.
I really was sick of it, and I didn't see a lot of meaning in it. But I guess the positive is that gave me a lot of motivation to apply myself in college. And the direct result of that now is I'm blessed to be able to be in a higher position where I have the privilege of managing and having a high level of responsibility. But for a lot of the guys I worked with, and a lot of the guys I still manage and work with every day, a lot of their situations are different. And it's funny because there were definitely guys I met who really did just love welding. They loved being steel fabricators. They loved doing just that work and getting better at it and improving. And they were very content to do that. And there were other guys who really weren't content to do that, and who kind of fell into it one way or another, a lot of them because they had responsibility. And they had families they needed to take care of, or guys who just didn't really care what they did. And that happened to be something they were able to learn, and it paid the bills. And that's something I see today. Even now, like with the other coworkers I work with, even on a management level, I think they all care about their work, but I think some of them care, to different extents in different ways. I think some people draw a lot more validation from the work they do than others. And I think that's something even I'm still trying to navigate, is how much does the work I'm doing really matter to me, like in my heart? Because it's funny, I definitely see the importance of the work I'm doing. I mean, just today I was on a job site building, a Catholic community school up in Ohio City, in Cleveland, that caters to, it's like a diverse community with, white students and African-American students and Hispanic students. And this school kind of takes pride, I think, in bringing a lot of diverse kids in on scholarships and stuff. And we get to be a part of building that. And I think that's really, really cool. I think it's really cool that we get to be a part of building a lot of schools, actually, a lot of public schools, which I'm very proud of. Hospitals, medical facilities, VA treatment facilities we've done. All that stuff matters because someone has to do that work. I think for a lot of guys, that's enough. And there's kind of like a simple contentment in that, knowing that this is where I fit in the world, this is what I can do, and that what I'm doing is making the world a better place. I mean, in construction especially, there's nothing more satisfying than being able to look, to look upon the work of your hands and know that that thing you made is going to be there for a long time, and it's going to serve people for a long time.
Well, Matthew Crawford wrote a great book called Shop Class as Soulcraft, Shop Class as Soulcraft. And he said that manual laborers feel after their day's work, he can simply point, that building stands, that car now runs, those lights are on. He could say that. It's very tangible. It's interesting that like at CCO, we have all these college students, and we look at them and it's like, we do a Jubilee conference, there's 3,000 to 4,000 students in a room. And it's like, I think about, here's a bunch of people who will have more education than 90% of the rest of the world. And they'll have such opportunities to make a difference in the world. But what's interesting is that the other organization I worked with for a while called the High Calling teamed with CCO, and we did videos on students and how they saw vocation, and we would make a contest out of it. And so these stories would come in, and we would do professional videos. And the stories that resonated the most, the stories that won every year, were trade stories. Students at a trade school who was like, I do this, I work with my hands and I create this and I see something out of it because it's so tangible,
Yeah.
It isn't pushing a bunch of paper around. It isn't, working, to figure out which spreadsheets so that, the bottom line of the company. It's something so meaningful. And yet, as a society, we demean this kind of work. It isn't seen as prestigious, and I find that to be sad. As I talk to a lot of business owners over the years, and one of the things we talk about is how can we help the people in the working class that work for these guys, these men and women. How do they make that work more meaningful to them? And so it's very important to do like lots of things like cross training so that they don't get, stuck in one job and feel like that's the only thing they can do. And it's like, it becomes so meaningless, so mundane over and over and over again. And so they can maybe switch different jobs. One thing is to help them see the end result. It's hard to see that. It's hard to see that tangible thing when everything is so disconnected now in our modern work. So perhaps those are kinds of ways that we could help see the purpose and meaning of it. I love how Tim Cook talked about the person on our hands and knees scrubbing the floor of a surgical suite. It's like, how important can that be?
Right. In a way, on the other end of it, the responsibility for the people who are privileged with more opportunity, for the Stanford graduates and the OSU graduates. And I think it kind of leans into what Tim Cook was talking about, to not just acknowledge and appreciate what, the people, so to say, on the bottom are doing. But I think then being privileged to be a person on the top, more so, what kind of a world can you make for those people to make it better, to be one of those people. And I've thought about that a lot, that, people of means, people who have the privilege of being in control and making those decisions and running those businesses, what can they be doing to make that work more appreciated and I guess even in a way more redeemed for
Yeah.
the people who are needed to do it. Um, that's something that I really appreciate about the company that I work for, is that our owner started out doing this work himself.
Right.
And, didn't go to college. He worked his way up to the point where he owns a successful company and he gets to run this stuff now. But the crews that he hires and even the subcontractors we have, he makes sure that they're being paid and treated fairly, that they're able to not just like get by, but to like thrive, to really make a living. And the people that we hire that put forth that effort get continued opportunity. He they get more responsibility and they get more opportunity to grow and to uh, get experience that in a way makes them more independent and can make them more personally successful, which I think is rare. I think
Yeah.
A lot of companies they don't like that mobility because they like being able to keep people where they need them, where they want them,
It strikes me that work is probably one of the main reasons, if not one of the sole ways that we can love our neighbor, is through our work. And so instead of what Steve Jobs said, find something that you love, do work that you love. Maybe we should say, love those for whom you work for. Love the people that your job is going to help. Whether it's the people around you or the end user or your client, or as you look through all the details of I'm part of this fabric of this company, and what I'm doing is not necessarily for me. I think that's the problem, is a lot of people seek their own self-satisfaction in their work, and that's like the opposite of the Christian work ethic. Christian work ethic is, I'm doing this for others. I'm working hard in order to provide for my family. It's for my family I work, not for my own self-satisfaction. It is
right.
for this company that I believe in to do this work. It's for these people who will be able to use these products that we make. If you find yourself in a work that you can't say that about, I don't know, it's going to be hard, but at least, I know that some people do work that they don't particularly love, but they're called to do it because they love the people that they're doing it for. A scripture that kind of strikes you upside the head is found in Colossians chapter 3. Paul talks about how husbands should treat their wives and how children should treat their parents and vice versa. And then he talks to slaves. I'm like, slaves. And he says in 3:23, he says, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord, not for human masters. There's satisfaction because you know that you're not working ultimately for that master, you're working for this other master. And it's good to work for him. And all that you do is serving him because you're loving God and loving others through your work. So that as bad as a job can be, and some of our jobs are pretty bad. I think of the old TV show Dirty Jobs,
Yeah.
And it's like, but who you're working for, it really changes a whole lot.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. Yeah, that's something that I definitely have seen firsthand. And the people you work under and the people you work with, the attitude that they have will affect your own quality of life in a very powerful way. So I think then as a believer, what it would look like in whatever work you're doing, if you really do take to heart, I am here to be a redemptive presence in the lives of every other person that I'm working with and that I'm working for, and that maybe I'm serving through my work. That mindset, and it's not just a mindset, because it's not like Christianity is just a self-help book, but really the power of the Holy Spirit working through a person truly living that really, really does shine light into the world. And, I've seen it. And the people that really figure that out and really do that stand out as beacons of light, because the people they work with, whether or not they're Christians, usually pretty universally love them. And I think it's because it's an exceptional thing, because it is the exception. Because most people are getting by. Some people are naturally easier to deal with than others. But to be a person who's conscious and who's kind of making that uphill walk, saying, I don't want to just get through work. I want work to be something where God is working through me. That is a rare and powerful thing.